Oh, damn plot.
6'4" and full of muscle. Doona doona. I asked you speak of my language.
There we go.
Do. He just smiled and give me a Vegemite sandwich. And he said, I come from a land down under. What?
I just like zoned out for a minute because the soundboard wasn't working, and I come back on that.
That's the song. Go listen to Men at Work. They're severely underrated.
Welcome everyone.
You better run.
Welcome everyone to the Anthony and Todd Show. I'm your host, Voncent. Today I'm joined by my co-host, who you may know as Trevor, aka the only person who finds Skyline chili appetizing, aka Little Home Depot, aka the guy who drew the ice cream cone on Gucci Mane's face while he was sleeping, aka your boy Trev, aka my coach Trevor. How are you doing?
I'm doing just dandy.
Again, welcome to the Anthony and Todd Show. We got a special episode planned for you today. We're talking about two good albums. I'm excited to talk about these albums.
Welcome to the August 3rd special of the Anthony and Todd Show.
Super special. And today, we're talking about Kirin J, Callinan, Bravado, Chicano Batman, Freedom is Free. Let's get right into it.
Let's talk to it.
Let's talk to it. Let's talk to these albums. So, album, how are you doing today?
Good.
That's not the voice I thought you were going to use.
What you think I was going to use?
Australian voice?
Oh. Oi, mate. Kirin J, man.
That's pretty...
Like everybody in Australia, I tickle crocodiles for a living.
I really hope someone from Australia listens to us.
You
and just
kangaroo jockey.
Calls us out and all that shit. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Kirin J, Callinan's Bravado. Kirin J, Callinan, artist I recently discovered. Needle Drop posted some of his music. I found it really, really interesting.
Are you thinking of Keith Urban? He's Australian.
I just don't understand that joke.
Keith Urban is Australian. I'm pretty sure. Do some fact checking.
Okay. All the singles that came from this album I found really, really interesting. They're either really, really beautiful like Bravado, or they're really, really weird like Down to Hang and Living Each Day. The songwriting is just so hilarious. I feel like it's just a bunch of like weird-ish mashed together at times. And at times it's really, really beautiful, and at times it's really, really emotional. But for a majority of the album, it's really, really weird and strange. This album is kind of like all over the place at times, whether it is kind of stylistically, but it isn't like all over the place where I feel like kind of tired towards the end. I feel like this album, it kind of ventures out to different styles. You get different forms of kind of like production on this. You get more of like EDM production at times. You get more of like rock/pop production at times. But I feel like this album is set up in a proper way. I feel like some of the production may be bland at times, but I feel it's kind of redeemed by Kirin and his just kind of like personality. Like examples of that, there's two like almost like EDM heavy tracks on this album, My Moment and Big Enough. They both have like almost EDM style like hooks and stuff like that. Really what saves these tracks isn't like the songwriting's like super deep. It's just like Kirin's just showing his personality. On My Moment, what really saves the track is Kirin's like personality. The song's all about, what I think it's all about is kind of climaxing. It's your moment. I hope that's what it's about. Because at first listen, I didn't get that. I thought, oh, Kirin's just making these weird noises on the hook. And the second listen, I'm like, oh, this song's about climaxing. Oh, he's busting a nut on the chorus. That's
the chorus.
The songwriting is so strange and weird. And the hook is so unique. And then on Big Enough, what really saves the track is that it is so strange. That there is... The songwriting, it's about, like, how this town is big enough for the both of us. But he puts all these, like, weird cowboy references and how he, like, eats the horse's meat off the horse's back and strange stuff like that. And it's really bizarre, but it's also really, really funny, I feel like. And it's kind of like a parody of almost like a EDM track or something like that. And then on the deeper moments, I feel like one of my main problems with this album is on some of the deeper, more emotional moments. Family Home, which I feel like is the most deepest that he gets, he really isn't able to craft a good enough narrative. On Family Home, I feel like the main problem with that track is it seems like a relatively like fresh wound. Like whatever he's talking about is super sensitive to him. It seems like he hasn't got to the point where he can like talk about it yet. Or he just doesn't go deep enough where I'm not really understanding the narrative. But his vocal performance on the track and the production wise, I feel like are pretty good. I feel like his vocal performances on this album throughout the entire thing, they're really, he's kind of sort of like a hybrid, I want to say in like the middle of like the Jeff Rosenstock Lil Yachty scale. He's not full like passionate but terrible. He's like almost there. On Bravado, I feel like he kind of shows his vocal cords enough. But like on other tracks, you can tell he's more passionate than he is like trying to hit the right key at times. This album has a lot of really good songs on it. Songs like Song About Drugs, where he's just literally talking. It's this weird track. It's just another song about drugs. But he just comes in with these like weird vocal performances where he's like, wrapped up in plastic, throw down the stairs, feeling fantastic. He just says weird shit like that. And it kind of like redeems the... I love you.
I love you.
He just says like weird thing all...
I love you. I love you too.
He just says like a bunch of these weird like vocal phrases that I find are really, really amusing and enjoyable. Along with the production being great. Down Hang's another highlight of this album, where this girl currently met online is down to hang with him, and then he goes on to list a bunch of metaphors of what she's down to hang as, or like she's down to hang like Jesus, a Van Gogh, a Picasso, or my personal favorite, an asphyxiated man with a belt and a van, his dick in his hand. He's down to hang. It's just like a bunch of weird lines throughout, a bunch of weird metaphors, similes, all that stuff. It was kind of hard picking for which one of these tracks I was going to put on my best song of the year, and I ended up going Song About Drugs because it does have those strange vocal parts and is so catchy. Living Each Day is another highlight of this album. He places up this narrative. A father on a deathbed told his son, live each day, and then he kind of jokingly says, or maybe he read it on a fridge magnet. Like he just kind of like repeats together the narrative, or like, oh wait, never mind, that's too real. Just put something joking in front of it. I really, really enjoyed that. And then he like goes on this like, I want to say like, it's just like a traditional rock song where like where the point is live each day like it's your last. But then there's these strange parts of shrug off the urge to systematically kill. It's like you don't expect like a song like Living Each Day to have like a line like that in the chorus, and I think it's really, really cool and unique. He goes on like, this guy that he's talking about goes on this like, he lives each day like it's his last, and he like calls everyone up, tells them he loves them, and then like one of the last parts of the song is he had a sandwich, ooh, he loved a sandwich. Like it was his last. It's like Kirin's just great at like setting something kind of like almost realistic up and kind of like putting this joke in front of it, almost this like weird punchline in front of it, and I feel like it really plans out on like most of this album. Of course, Bravado, the huge highlight of this album, is the closing track. I feel like this is where Kerwin shows it's not really a jokey song as the rest of them. I feel like it's more of a serious track. He has a really, really emotional performance. I feel like he shows off his vocal cords, but I feel like they are kind of on the Lil Yachty, Jeff Rosenstock scale of like passionate at times, not really hitting pitch. But I feel like it's a really, really beautiful track. I feel like the production matches with his voice together in a really, really strange way. I feel like everything just blends together in this album. I feel like the second half of the album isn't as good as the first. Like once you get past Big Enough, Family Home until Bravado, I want to say it's kind of like a slump downwards, because it isn't as punchy or as weird as the first. It's not as jokey. That's probably like one of the only complaints I really have about this album, is it's set up that way. The songs in the second half, they aren't bad, I would say, because the production wise throughout this entire album, I was amused even more. Even on some of the more blander EDM tracks, I found it to be enjoyable. I feel like the second half, Kerwin goes to a more emotional place. It's more of a serious tone, but like the jokes that he's throwing on the second half, I don't feel like land as hard as they do in the first half. Not to say this is a bad album or anything. The second half has a lot of really enjoyable vocal performances from Star, from Wise Blood, that really save the second half. Kerwin has a great vocal. I feel like Kerwin kind of shines in the second half with his vocal performances more than he did in the first half, where it is more of he's just kind of wacky, goofy antics kind of deal. And I like this album overall. On the second half, some of the songs that I really, really didn't care for, we already talked about Family Home. It had nice vocal performances. It's a nice little easy listen, but it kind of clashes with the rest of the album emotionally and stylistically. Telling Me This has a beautiful vocal performance from George Elbrick. I hope I'm saying his name right. Hopefully I am. Has a nice little vocal performance. There's a little harmonies throughout the entire track. This whole town, kind of like Friend of Lily Modison, kind of similar in the sense I feel like they're good, but it's such a clash with the first half of the album. I'm kind of almost fatigued in a sense, like a little bit. And then you get into Bravado, and it's like Bravado is such like a great closing statement that I feel like it's able to match the second half of the album with the first half in a way and put everything in a nice ribbon. I do like this album a lot. I think it's a good album. I feel like a lot of the tracks that came off this album are some of my favorite songs of the year. There's a lot of good vocal performances from Kerwin. There are a lot of great moments throughout this album. I just wish it was segmented in a different manner. So we got more of like a joking track, and then we take a break. We go down a more emotional road, and maybe we come back through a joking track. They kind of clash with each other in a sense, and I wish that's my only really complaint. And it's not that big of a deal, I feel like, because it's after the first listen, I've loved all these tracks. There's no tracks that I like despise or hate. I think all these tracks are good. Some of them, songwriting wise, aren't as good as others, but production, again, throughout the board was really, really good. Kerwin's performances, vocal performances were good. His guest features from James Chance, from Cohen and Moccasin, from Star, from George Elbert, from Wise Blood, from Finn Family were all great. There wasn't a vocal performance on this album or a production performance on this album that I didn't feel like matched it. He's just a strange dude, and this album is joking, but it also goes to a more serious place at times. And I feel like Kerwin, while the gap on this album between the first part and the second part might be a little hard to grasp at first, I feel like it's kind of rewarding, and it isn't as a clash as, let's say, Kendrick Lamar's Damn. I'm not super fatigued. I'm only like minorly fatigued when listening to the first part and the second part. But I feel like, again, this album's good throughout. I feel like Kerwin does a good job. So in conclusion, I think this album's 8.5. Really enjoyed it. Love the vocal performances. Love the production. I love just Kerwin's personality, and it's nice to see it shine throughout the album.
Interesting.
What did you think? Are you gonna run me down now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna sit over here with my fidget spinner.
Okay, so, if I did make this album, if I had to, like, deconstruct it, it reminds me if back my freshman year, I used to not, like, be able to drive, and I couldn't get home after school, so I'd have to walk over to my mom's office, and the way I passed the time was I would listen to Pandora on my iPod, and I would have all these different, like, stations, and I would just listen to, like, whatever came on, and I had a more of like a comedy-esque station where like funnier songs came on. And there was this song called We Ran Out of CD Space by this band called Psycho Stick. And I thought the song was like pretty funny, okay? And I showed it to one of my friends. I showed it to a lot of my friends actually, but I showed it to one of my friends at the time. And this kid loved that song to death. Thought it was the funniest thing in the history of all comedy, showed it to every person he had ever met, and sang the song and played the song literally every second of the day. And I grew tired of it. I just got so weary of it, and I think that in a way kind of ruined my ruined my perception of funny, kind of comedic songs. It's almost like if you took that experience and put it in a blender with the most stereotypical, like, Australian 80s pop star ever, and the entirety of Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping, the movie that came out, like, last year, and its soundtrack, the one with, like, Andy Samberg, right? You put it all in a blender, this is what you would get.
Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
To me, it's a bad thing. Because I enjoy synth-saturated 80s songs. I like new wave. I really like Men at Work. I really like Talking Heads. I really like some of his, I guess, musical inspirations. But his lyrical inspirations, I feel, draw more from Psycho Stick and that song. And just my experience with that song is not good. I'm not a huge fan of comedic albums unless they are, just really funny and, like, really off the wall. And I felt like this wasn't funny. And I enjoyed Popstar. I think that I crack up at that movie. I think that movie's so funny. I think that the songs are more well-written, but in a bad way. But I think that Kirin J. Callinan genuinely put his heart and soul into making these jokes that, for me, don't land. I don't think that they're that funny. From a musical standpoint, I feel like his just bad. Like, I know. Song About Drugs, I think, is the biggest, like, contender of what I thought of this album. Like, that song is catchy as all get out, and I'm still, like, singing it. I re-listened to it today, and I'm still, like, singing it in my mind. But, like, he has no concept of musicality whatsoever. He switches keys probably 10 times within a minute of the entire track. Like, they're not even in the same key. They're not even part of the same scale, like, that he started in. He's just nowhere on the map. I don't understand, like, why he does that so much. And it wasn't even just in that song. He would have random key changes, like, in the middle of lines. You would go from half of the chorus would be in one key, and then the next half of the chorus would be in a different one, and the guitar solo after that would be in a completely different key, different register. Like, what is going on in his production? I don't understand. Song About Drugs and Bravado, for me, are the defining moments on this album. I really enjoyed both of them, despite what I said about the key changes, despite what I said about jokes not being funny. I thought Song About Drugs was weird enough, and it was catchy enough to keep my attention for that long. I liked watching him parade around the city in his music video. I liked watching him do karate with a bunch of little kids and, like, jump in a waterfall and stuff.
Do you like the one, like, frame? So, like, someone in the comments section found this one frame and they time marked it, and I clicked on it, and it's the frame where Kirin J. Callinan's getting out of the water, and you see his donger. it's not good.
Why did you ask me if I liked it, man?
Did you like it?
I didn't see it. I didn't click on the frame.
Do you like it now?
No.
Are you interested to see it? I'll show it for you if you want.
No, I want to leak it to TMZ and get millions of dollars.
That's a funny joke. That's like anyone at TMZ actually gives a shit.
So, yeah, I liked Song About Drugs. It's very catchy. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Bravado, I think, is more musical. I don't think Kirin J. Callinan has a bad voice. Like you were saying, you think he's on the Lil Yachty, Jeff Rosenstock spectrum, where he's very passionate but not very talented.
I don't think he's... I'm not saying he isn't talented. I feel like he comes in and out of that place at times. Like on Down to Hang. Let's get an example of it. He's just like... It doesn't even seem like he's singing in key. Which I don't think that's
as important.
I don't think that's a bad thing, because there's artists that can do it. Again, Jeff Rosenstock, Lil Yachty, that can do it.
End of That's That by MF Doom.
There's artists that can't sing in key and they sound perfect. They sound fine. They fit real well. And I feel like on Kerwin's performances, where he seems like he's not singing on key, I feel like it does fit the album. It does. It's more on the jokingly tracks.
It definitely does fit. But I think that a lot of the time he sells himself short. I think he is a talented singer. I think he knows he's a talented singer. And so he belts, and I don't want to say uses it for evil, but he doesn't use his talent to his full potential. He doesn't use the voice that he was given to his full potential, you know? And part of me just doesn't like that. You can be as jokey as you want, and I sing jokey all the time, and I don't try. Like when I was singing Down Under earlier, like not my best. I wasn't even I was barely trying, you know? I might as well just been screaming. But like I think that Kirin has more talent than that and uses it. And like he knows he's talented and he feels kind of stuck up about it. That's the impression that I got from the way he was singing. It's like when somebody's like, "Oh, I'm not good at singing," and they go up for karaoke and they joke around and like they know they're super good and they know they're gonna blow everybody out of the water. They know they're gonna impress everybody and everybody's gonna come up and say like, "Wow, I didn't know you could sing," afterward. But like they go up there anyway and pretend to act all shy and then they just belt. And I think that's what he's doing for tracks like Bravado, for tracks like Live Each Day. Another thing you were talking about, the production value sometimes might be a little bland, and I would definitely agree with that. I think Live Each Day is probably one of those boring songs of the whole year that I've heard.
I don't. That's the one track where I really don't get that. I get it from more of the EDM tracks. Living Each Day, I feel like more. It's because Kerwin's more on that track than most of the other tracks. But like Living Each Day, I really don't get that. I more get like rock production, but it doesn't really bore me as much as more EDM like bass tracks.
I find that Live Each Day bored me like just with its production value, with its lyrics. Like I just like the systematically killing. Like I heard it and I was like, I just didn't think it was that funny. You know, like I didn't see the appeal. I guess I just didn't think it was funny. It was like when people make like parody songs on YouTube, or they make like when Ray William Johnson put out music or something like that. That's what it reminded me of. When people like try to make funny songs on YouTube, but this guy's like bigger. I literally think that he's living the life that Andy Samberg lived in Never Stop, Never Stopping. That's what it said. Like, you listen to his interviews, you look at the way he conducts himself, you listen to this album, and it's just like Connor for real all over again. Like in that movie. I don't understand. Are we all part of this? Are we all not in on this joke? Is he the only one? I don't get it. I'll have to give Bravado a light 5.5. Thank you.
Honestly, not as far as I thought you were gonna give it.
It's not as bad as Father John Misty.
Oh, you're killing me, Trevor. You're killing me. Don't throw that album at me. Don't throw Father John Misty at me. What did Father John Misty? What did he do to you?
Made consistently good music until this year.
Okay, you ready for
loser?
Chicano Batman?
Okay, Chicano Batman is a 4-piece American-based band from Los Angeles. I have recently discovered them through their lead single from their last album, Freedom is Free, which came out earlier this year, and I was immediately hooked. I'm a fan of Latin music. I'm a fan of just that Latin sound. One of my favorite albums of all time is the Buena Vista Social Club, which I've talked about before on the show. If you ever find any old recordings, I'm sure I'll talk about it later at some point because I like it that much. Basically, bunch of old folk musicians from Cuba got together and formed a super group with a couple of Chicano musicians from America, and they made this great album of all these different Cuban, Afro-Latin sounds, and it's amazing. So I was already floored by Chicano Batman when I heard them first, but I went to this album, and I have to say that I really, really enjoyed what they put out. Freedom is Free, I think, is just it's a good mix of like those like psychedelic kind of funk and soul sounds of America, especially that you would get in LA, but also with these Mexican infused sounds and instrumentation. Bardo Martinez, the frontman of Chicano Batman, I think does an amazing job with his lead vocals. I think that he just gives that Latin flair that Chicano Batman brings to the table that not a lot of artists are doing nowadays. I think that one small critique I have of Freedom is Free is that I do get a little fatigued about halfway through the album. Just like you said for Kirin J. Callinan, just what we've talked about for Damn, I think that that's just kind of something that happens with a lot of albums where artists put a lot of their best material right at the beginning of the album to draw people in, and by the time halfway, 3/4 of the album rolls around, you get a little fatigued. And not to say that their music isn't as good, I just think that it's not as musically unique and not as drawing as the beginning of the album.
What I think about this album, and like overall, I like this album. This album's good. My only couple of complaints, the first one being, it's, again, I despise layouts. Your layout of your album needs to make somewhat sense.
Mm-hmm.
And on this album, the only part I don't like about the layout is not because I get like kind of fatigued halfway through, which I kind of do in a sense, but it's strange that you start off with kind of like 4 tracks where they're completely speaking in English, and then you cut to La Huera, the interlude, and then La Huera. I'm saying that right?
La Jura.
La Jura. You cut to La Jura, and it's Spanish speaking, and then you cut to Flecha al Sol, and that's also Spanish speaking, and the rest of the tracks are in English or they're just instrumentals, which I really don't get why you got to put the 2 Spanish speaking tracks right next to each other.
I don't know.
I just found that to be really, really strange, and that they're only in the middle of the album. After you get past pretty much all the singles, you get to the Spanish speaking tracks, and then it closes out with more English speaking tracks or instrumentals. I just found that to be really, really strange. I didn't think that really tired me out. I just thought that was a weird layout choice, which I feel like I hate when they put songs together that they relate together in a strange way. And Flecha al Sol and La Huera, I feel like don't relate tonality wise.
No, they
but
don't.
the only hook is that they're both Spanish speaking tracks, and I feel like it's the only reason why they're put together, either because their label wanted to put together, or the band thought, oh, maybe this would be easier for English speaking audiences to understand if we put these right next to each other. I just didn't really care for that part of the layout. Overall, I feel like this album is pretty well spaced out. I feel like the better half is in the first.
Yeah.
For sure. But the second half, I feel like it's still instrumentally strong as the first half. I feel like one of my favorite instrumental moments is on this album is Area C, the closing out instrumental track,
really good, yeah.
which I usually don't care for instrumental tracks. We talked about this last week with Tyler the Creator's track Enjoy Right Now Today, another instrumentally charged conclusion, which I didn't feel really supported that album. It only really did in title, but on this track, I just like the instrumental so much. I feel like it is. I feel like you really kind of put lyrics over it. I feel like it would be a really, really kick-ass ending to a film, like a really, really kick-ass score. I feel like that's what this song. It would be like an amazing score to have over a film. But I feel like it's a nice little send-off. It's a nice little 2-minute instrumental piece that I really, really enjoy. And I usually don't care for him, but on this album, I really found it to be enjoyable. Overall, this album reminded me a lot. You were talking about Buena Vista Social Club. This album, what I really get for it is I get like vibes of almost like mariachi band and stuff like that, with only really the organ and I want to say some of the bass. Mm-hmm. But I get more shades of Alabama Shakes from this project than anything else. This album reminds me a lot of Sound and Color. It's not as, I don't know, it's not like the same vibe, but there's elements of Alabama Shakes that are represented in this album. Like I
Yeah,
feel like
well,
a lot.
they both draw from like funk and soul influences. I think that Bardo Martinez sounds a lot like Brittany Howard in his delivery, in his falsettos. Like he's pretty much the Latin version of Brittany Howard.
That's what I wrote in my notes.
Pretty much, like they sound very similar. I think they would make it an amazing collaboration if they ever did something together. I think probably the strongest argument you could make for that similarity is, I think, their lead single that drew me in the first place, Friendship is a Small Boat in the Storm. You listen to his delivery there, you listen to the instrumentation, they're very similar in that sense.
Yeah, I again love the instrumentation, love the bass on this album, love the guitar on this album. I love organ. We need more organ music. It's just a great instrument. Synthesizers are nice, the keys are nice. Yeah, I just love all the instrumentation on this album. Again, reminds me a lot of Alabama Shakes. On I want to say Right Off the Back or Jealousy, I forget which one, but it gives me a little bit of shade of kind of like Turn Blue era, Black Keys, a shade, not fully, but kind of like a hint.
That's exactly what
almost like that type of indie rock type deal. The only major other complaint I can say about this album is that the songwriting isn't special on a lot of these tracks. There isn't anything that really surprises me. And not to say they're not like going deep enough, like we've said before about Jay-Z, and we said it before about a couple other artists. I feel like there's just not a lot here songwriting wise. The Taker story actually surprises me with his songwriting. I thought it was kind of unique. He tells this like long story about the Takers and stuff like that. It's this long, unique story. Friendship is Small Boat in the Storm is kind of unique in a sense. Also, Freedom is Free is also kind of unique in a sense. But other than that, there isn't anything songwriting-wise that like shocks me or surprises me. Which is one of the reasons I love Kirin J. Callinan's last album, because it did surprise me. It did shock me. There were moments that it wasn't paint by the numbers. It felt like there was instances where it is kind of all over the place. There's moments where I'm shocked, and I'm kind of gladly shocked. I'm happy that these changes are here. On this album, it's kind of like almost, I want to say paint by numbers for the most of it, songwriting wise, but it's not super paint by the numbers where it's annoying or too preachy. This album has a lot of good hooks. I will give it that.
It does.
Freedom is Free probably has one of the best hooks of the year. I feel like that's probably my favorite on this track. Run has an amazing hook. Friendship is a Small Boat in the Storm has an amazing hook. Pass You By also has a pretty good hook. So the hooks are really, really good. This album is really, really catchy. It is really, really similar to Alabama Shakes, instrumentally wise, since they both take from funk and stuff like that. But yeah, overall, I really, really enjoyed this album. I thought it was a fun little album. It would be a nice album to have on vinyl, I feel like. Because it does sound really retro and stuff like that. It does have nice moments to it. And I feel like that would be a really, really nice album to own on vinyl, just to have like the crackles and stuff come with it. So that'd be cool. Overall, I think this album's an 8, straight 8. I really enjoyed it. It's a good album.
I still really enjoyed this album. I think, at least to counter your songwriting, I think that it's definitely a valid point. The songwriting really isn't super special here, but I think that they covered the topics that they wanted to cover, especially, I mean, you look at the cover, you talk about Freedom is Free as an album title. It's definitely a play off of that, and I've got a bumper sticker of it. It says, Freedom isn't free.
Freedom isn't free!
Yeah, I don't know how to get it off of the car, but either.
Did your mom put that on? Or did it just come with the car?
I think, well, I mean, my aunt and uncle had it, and I don't know. My uncle's a veteran, so I don't know if they put it on there, because he probably got it from some event that he attended, but I know he's not, like that, you know? But I don't know if it came with the car, or if he put it on there, but then, now it's on.
Good idea.
I'm going to scratch off the NT part, so it just says Freedom is Free. I think I'm going to do that. Whenever I get the chance, I'm going to do that. But anyway, I digress. That's a big statement about we got to send people over to fight for our country. We got to send troops. We got to send aid to these countries. We got to fight off ISIS. We got to do all this stuff. And not to get overly political here, but I know a lot of people don't think that that's necessary. Sometimes myself included. So I think that the fact that we have now a president who doesn't always support the most lenient immigration laws. We have kind of a White House staff and this general mindset going around America that we don't always support that. I think that Chicano Batman, who legally immigrated from Mexico, I think that they have a different mindset on that. And I think that they're kind of giving their voice in protest to that. That's kind of why Freedom is Free reminds me of protest songs. You know, it reminds me of that era of protest songs. That's why it's got that retro feel to it. I think Freedom is Free definitely gets across that point. You've got that your guns up on display, but you can't control how I feel. No way. Lines like that just give off that air of a protest song. You can keep all the guns you want, keep all your freedom you want, but they definitely have something to say. As far as the rest of the songwriting, I think that Mexican folk songs, which is something that they draw from, and folk songs in general, don't really have super compelling songwriting. I mean, they were simplistic. They got across their point. And I think the song, like you mentioned, the Taker song, I think the Taker song is definitely a huge, shining example of that. It tells its narrative. It tells it in simple language. It's why authors like Ernest Hemingway got popular. And folk songs stay around forever. It's a catchy song that tells a story. And I think that that's something that we have to look at when we look at songwriting, is what kind of narrative or what point is the artist trying to get across. And in this case, given Chicano Batman members' backgrounds and history, I think that we have to look at the folk songs that they were probably raised on in Mexico and eventually when they got to Los Angeles with their Mexican heritage.
One minor nitpick I forgot to bring up. Since the album is called Freedom is Free, I really don't get the protest vibe that you're talking about, other than La Huera and The Taker's Story. Those are the only two ones I feel like really fit the title of this Freedom is Free. The rest of the album, I really don't get that. And I really doesn't feel like it puts a damper on that. It's just more of a minor nitpick I have. It's not like a really thing that kind of like ruins the album for me. It's just more of a minor complaint. I wish they... I would...
Have you translated the Spanish songs? I'm just curious.
La Huera? Yeah, I did.
Majora is... Yeah, it's
Majora,
the police.
sorry. Yeah, I
Majora's
looked into
Mask.
that, and I felt like that one really fits the Freedom is Free
it
title.
definitely does.
But
I was like, can we talk about the intro and the guitar like licks on that? That's amazing. Very impressed.
Flitch Out Soul, I did the English translation of that. I think I may have gotten a bad English translation because I used Google Translate on the Genius page.
Yeah. I was just curious.
But
not
it
trying
doesn't
to, like, make a point.
It doesn't. It's not. That song really
it's
doesn't
not very
relate.
political.
That's why I was talking about earlier how it seems that those two songs were placed together only because they're Spanish songs.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's... Yeah, I think you're right. Like, Majora and its intro and Freedom is Free and the Taker song, I think. In a way, Area C, just its imagery that it evokes through its music itself without any lyrics, I think that those fit the theme. I think Passed You By could, but the rest of it I really just think is folk songs at their finest. So that's at least all I got out of it. Overall, I really enjoyed Freedom is Free. I knew that I would. I really enjoy Chicano Batman. I've started following them more closely. I can't wait to see like what they put out next. I'd love to see them live, and I would love to get that on vinyl. Winking at Vincent because he owes me a birthday present.
No. They are coming to Columbus in October.
Ooh, let's go see them.
It's like the bar next to Express Live.
Oh yeah, I love that one. Bar next to Express
It's
Live.
it's like the bar that's literally like right next to it.
Well, we should go. But overall, I think with my minor nitpicks of like I guess like you mentioned, some of the not very linking parts of the album, not a very like cohesive layout of the album, I would have to give this album probably an 8.75.
It's a good album. I would recommend you listen to it if you like album shakes. If you like, I don't know, funk or indie rock and you want to see like some weird hybrid between the two that is unique in a sense, I would recommend it if you like that style of music. Good album. I'm glad I actually listened to this album. It was a nice surprise.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite instrumentation of the year comes from this, especially on Area C. I love that
I really like Area C, and I liked Enjoy Right Now Today on Tyler the Creator's Flower Boy. I think that we're getting almost into this trend of credit music, as if the album's over, because I know visual albums are very popular. They've been a trend over the past year. Things like Lemonade, things like Endless, Frank Ocean, things like I would even consider the story of OJ to at least be like, wow, does a music video?
No,
I would
JC
consider
had
it
a
at least
visual
to be like a tiny visual album.
He had a visual album for 44 for 4.
Did he?
Yeah, it was just 44 for 4 for 4. No, it was actually, I'm sorry, Bore Bordy Bore.
Bore Bordy Bore by Baby. Go listen. Not even Anthony Fantano did a review of Chicano Batman.
I feel like I looked the other day, we're the only person who's reviewing this, so maybe we'll get to the
because it's good. Find good music for yourself.
So, thanks for listening to the Anthony and Todd Show. Next week, Joey Badass. All American Badass. Is that how you say it?
It's actually pronounced like this. Joey Bad Butt. So you can put more emojis and it's family friendly. All American bad butt.
So next week, Joey Badass, All American Badass, Vic Mensa, the autobiography.
Who's the autobiography of?
I think it's actually of
I think it's of Albert Einstein.
Oh, okay, good. So yeah, stay tuned for next week.
Now Albert Einstein has to write a biography of Vic Mensa.
Oh shit. Till next time, guys, make sure you like our Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter. Ooh, we have Twitter now. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Podbean, Google Play Music, and iTunes. And if you want to submit a question for next week's episode, there's a link in the description. If you like our theme song, it's by our big friend, DJ Quest. He's a big friend. Our intro song's called No Sleep, and our outro song is called Reply. Links to the songs are in the description. Go on SoundCloud. Click on
the like if you like.
Click on the links in the description. Go on SoundCloud. Message him on SoundCloud being like, hey, SoundCloud's going to close in like 30 days.
How big are you?
How big are you? We need to know.
Our big friend will weigh himself, and we will finally get the answer that we've been looking for this whole time.
This has been episode 7 of the Anthony and Todd Show. No episode title.
Yeah, it does.
What is it?
You Vegemite eating kangaroo jockey.
I don't like that. Till next time, guys. See ya.
Bye.